James, we had a fun conversation today. I know we normally talk about ads, tech, digital economy, and I think it's hard to talk about the digital economy without talking about Bitcoin these days. Anyone's been reading the news, that thing has ripped from 28,000 to 60,000 almost overnight. And so we were able to have Fred Krueger, who you have a long relationship with, who's one of the foremost thinkers of Bitcoin in the world, join us today. Tell us what is going on.
Yeah, and before anyone listens, we just want to make it really clear, this is not meant to be financial advice. Fred is about as bullish on Bitcoin as anyone you could find, so take it all with a grain of salt. But he is a fascinating guy. He was my first boss in tech. He's a math PhD from Stanford. He had 6 years of prop trading. He's had 10 non-crypto exits. And as I mentioned, he is totally as bullish and as confident that Bitcoin is going to change the world. And just given his background and given his experience, we were just thrilled to have a chance to talk with him. So here's our interview with Fred Krueger explaining to us what is going on with Bitcoin and why he thinks people should care about it. All right. Welcome to a very special edition of Taking Inventory. Today we have Fred Krueger on as a guest. Fred is now probably one of the most respected thought leaders when it comes to Bitcoin, the Bitcoin ETF, and where Bitcoin is going. He also was my first boss in Los Angeles and has just an amazing background and done a ton of stuff. So, Fred, thank you for being here.
Hey, James, thanks. Thanks a lot.
Yeah. Thank you for making the time. I know you got a lot going on. But before we get into Bitcoin, just thought maybe just for people, just listeners in general, you can give a little bit about your background, I think just from the startups to, all the different things. I think it's just kind of fascinating.
Yeah, so before the startups, I spent 6 years on Wall Street as a prop trader, and so I know Wall Street really well. And then I did about 20 years in startups, and got starting in 1992 to whatever about now. Let's say so I just did a series of startups, one after the other, and kind of got into crypto around 2017, but I got really focused on Bitcoin in 2019, right? And I wasn't really loud on Twitter that much. And then what happened is the ETF started becoming a reality. And what I realized that this was going to be the event that really kicked off mass adoption in Bitcoin and I just got very, very bullish, and I realized that what I knew the rest of the world didn't know, which is I knew that from the Bitcoiners' perspective, they don't really understand Wall Street. They don't understand normal investing. They don't understand 60-40 asset allocation in Vanguard investing. They don't understand any of that stuff, right? These Bitcoiners. They're just focused on Bitcoin and degen trading, right? And so they weren't really even concerned about these ETFs, right? So they were like, yeah, these ETFs are not important. Let's just continue what we're doing. And meanwhile, the Wall Street guys, well, they do one ETF a day. There's one new ETF a day that comes out. So they're like, well, Bitcoin kind of cool, had a pretty good thing. It went up a lot, went down a lot, but whatever. Well, there should be some demand for this. So I think Wall Street really underestimated it as well, right? So now you have, and I just sort of saw it and I was like, you are putting together, nitro and glycerin together, right? And independently, they look kind of very harmless. You put them together, you apply pressure, and boom, right? And so that's kind of what I saw. I saw that there was this very, very unique set of circumstances that was happening here. And so I just came out on Twitter and talked about it in just a really low-tech way. And people kind of immediately got what I was saying. And they were saying, wait a second, if he's right, stuff's going to go berserk. And I don't think we're anywhere finished with that, So I think we've heard that, we've seen the beginning, and it really was, a lot of people were saying, well, this is going to be a sell the news event, and it's not a big deal. And in fact, there were a lot of Bitcoiners who sold the news. Right? They're like, great, 38,000, great. Let me sell that. And so we had a lot of FTX liquidation, sort of sale, bankruptcy stuff that hit. So the initial, if you looked at January, you could easily come out of the month of January and say, well, yeah, these ETFs were a big snoozer. This was a completely non-event. It's a snoozer. And then February was exactly the opposite, right? So February we started seeing some amazing flows and action, and to give you an idea of how significant it is, there's a site called ByteTree that lists all the fund flows across all the different instruments, including spot ETFs, futures ETFs, other kind of exchange traded products, right, in Europe in particular, not just in the US. And the previous high was in August of 2020. And in August of 2020, you had about 70,000 Bitcoin that were bought into the market. There were new flows into funds, right? In 1 month. Well, in February, there was 100,000, right? 100,000 Bitcoin. But now we're running at a 200,000 run rate.
That's crazy. Wow.
We are running at a 200,000 run rate. So, and by the way, Bitcoin is higher, is twice the price that it was in 2020. So there really is, we are literally talking about 6 to 8 times as much money per day that is going into buying Bitcoin as in the peak of the 2020 bull market.
That's amazing. Is that amount of volume being traded and the sheer number, is that being driven by institutions now that ETFs are available, or do you see that as retail investors? Like, who's driving this volume?
Okay, so I would say it's primarily retail, right? Retail investors, for the very first time, can go on their Fidelity, their Charles Schwab, and a number of other things, wherever, E-Trade, wherever you have your money, right? And for the very first time, they can buy a very close proxy to Bitcoin, right? They never had that possibility. So, now there's also a bunch of hedge funds that are speculating on this stuff, and they're, smart money sort of betting that this is going to happen, right? But I think that the most of these flows are just retail at this point. Now, the next big wave that's going to hit is kind of all these advisors, right? Advising people to put them in their quote unquote managed accounts, or just people who have advisors, and so, and they meet with their advisors once a month, and they discuss their portfolio, and they pick a direction, right? Those advisors haven't even started. They haven't even started. Okay. They take 3 months to get going. Okay. They haven't even finished studying this thing yet. So that's coming in maybe May, like June. That's when these guys are really going to get up to speed, and they're going to get comfortable. They're not even there yet, right? So you're just looking at the very tip of this market movement. That's why I'm so bullish, right? Because I look at this thing and I'm like, okay, we're about to break all-time high, and we've had this thing's been live for 8 weeks, right? But not even 7 weeks, and we are now doing $600 million a day in new funds coming into this. And if you just go to the average bar in your area, right? And just ask yourself how much Bitcoin talk you're hearing. Very little, right?
Yeah.
Very little still, And we were all around in 2017. And James, remember when 2017 was like in LA?
Mm-hmm. I remember we met with Clark, we talked about it, and you were totally right. I actually think I did buy some Bitcoin then because of that. So thank you.
But everybody was talking about everything,
yeah.
Tron, whatever it was, like. But 2017 was everybody was like, this, I got to get in on this. How do I get in on it? how do I leave my job and do this? You know what I'm saying? And how do I get a new career in this .com shit, right? I'm sorry, not .com, but blockchain industry, right? How do I create my own coin? So everybody was scratching their head doing it, and it was the talk of the town and everything else, right? And in 2017, we went from 1,000 to 20,000 in 1 year. Now, 2024, you have the market starts at 50,000, and we're up, or 45,000, right? And we're up 30% so far in 2024. Like 30%. Like we could go up 10 times in the price of Bitcoin in 1 year, right? I mean, everything's possible, right? And this isn't like looking at a stock where you sort of go, well, that's really expensive. But as you guys kind of know, when people want to buy something, they just buy it. And all you have to do is look at Tesla in 2020, right? And there were people shorting Tesla, and they just got taken out to the woodshed, right? And it didn't matter. There was no rhyme or reason Tesla was going to go up.
And does this have anything to do with like the fun of like, is Bitcoin as a like a distributed bank that all of us can store money? Does this have anything to do with it yet, or this is just purely the financialization?
No, I mean, I think it has that, right? It all that stuff is built, and it doesn't need building anymore. So the thing about Bitcoin is it's not sort of a tech story like what's coming out in Bitcoin next week, what's coming out in Bitcoin next year. Like if you look at your average tech company, including even something like Nvidia, there, it's like, well, we got this new chip that's coming out. We got Google, we got this new AI thing coming out. You know what I mean? But Bitcoin's built. It's not going to change, right? So it's not like what's the next thing for Bitcoin. It's what is the adoption of Bitcoin going to be? That's really the question, right? So can Bitcoin be used to store a ton of value and move a ton of value? Yes, it can, and and it can today. Now, are you paying attention? Well, probably not, because it's trading at 60,000. So when Bitcoin's trading at 1 million, it's like your radar about, oh my God, somebody just invented internet money. And where was I when internet money was just invented? And of course, we are all going to be using internet money from here on out, right? So I don't think this is, again, what I view this thing is literally humans have created the next version of money. Let's just go over the previous versions. We had gold, right? We had paper money, starting with like, let's say the British pound, right? And then we had British pound got supplanted by the US dollar, right? And now we got the US dollars getting supplanted not by another country's money, but by this new internet money. And I think that's the reality. We're going to a new form of money. It's that significant. And that means that you are going to be living to save that money. Everything's going to be denominated in that money. And that money will be ubiquitous, right? So I think that the one thing we've learned from, you guys have been very closely involved with Facebook at the beginning, is you go from this being a college student kind of thing to literally 80% of the planet is on Facebook. 75% of Americans have had COVID. Have you guys had COVID?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so, right. So, what I'm saying, we all are the same, right? We all use social media. We've all had COVID. We all have a smartphone. We all have broadband internet, right? Once these really revolutionary inventions get happening, they don't just stop at like 10% of the population. They go to 100%, well, more or less, 70, 80, 90%, right? And I think that the idea of a global internet currency that you cannot be debased, that cannot be stopped, that is completely secure, It's the ultimate use case for everything. It was like, great, I'll just store my savings in that thing and just remember 24 words. Great. I know. I don't need any banks anymore. I can pay anybody. I can store an arbitrary amount. I can put all my money for Fred Krueger in that thing and do it. So I think when Facebook was just coming out, we all underestimated how significant it was going to get, right? Significant it was going to be. I don't use Facebook anymore, but my wife uses Instagram, right? I use Twitter, but let's just say social media. You can't live without social media anymore, right? You can't live without it. Snapchat. I mean, it's like you can't live. You're going to be on one of those platforms, TikTok, one of them. It's not possible to live without it. And I think 20 years from now, it'll not be possible to live without Bitcoin. That's that simple. So if you think it's going to go to that direction, and that's where I think it's going to go, and there's 21 million coins, you have one real clear goal. Get as many of those coins as you can now. That's that simple, right? It's a one-way train. It's a one-way train.
Do you think, is it like, I have a lot of friends like from Snap that are kind of on the ETH side, the Framework Ventures guys in particular, and they're like extremely bullish on Ethereum, right? Like they talk about ETH all the time. I think Vance and you tweet back and forth to each other about this. But do you see, like, is Bitcoin going to become, like, are we going to have smart contracts? Is it going to be like my mortgage is going to be somewhere on this Bitcoin blockchain? Like, is it going to go to that level?
Like here's the thing. There's only one thing that counts. What is the thing that people call money, right? Let me give you a prop for that. Okay. I'll give you a prop.
For listeners, Fred is getting up right now, getting a prop.
Okay. I got this bar. This is a bar. Okay. It's approximately the same weight as gold. This bar is worth about $10. Okay. I bought it on eBay. It's tin. Tin is not considered money. This bar of gold would be worth, even in gold's miserable existence as a thing, this bar would be worth $500,000. Okay. It's a heavy bar, right? My point is that which one is picked as the world currency really matters, right? And I can tell you, it ain't going to be ETH. Not going to be ETH. And so not only I think you're kidding yourself by buying ETH, I think you're going to completely miss out on the investment generation of a lifetime, right? It's sort of like if you didn't buy Facebook and you bought, I don't know, Tag World, a company that I was involved in. Okay. My point is they may look similar, but there's only going to be one Facebook, right? And, these things look similar. The bar looks like gold. It says heavy as gold, but there's only one gold, right? There's only going to be one Bitcoin. And what it does, its technology, is not important. What's important is what people value this thing as a store of value, right? It's completely does nothing to do with the technology. Now, are there going to be smart contracts? There are going to be smart contracts on 100 different layer ones. And the only thing that's relevant to those is going to be how those things can hold wrapped Bitcoin, right? That's it. That's the only thing that's going to be relevant, right? I think there's going to be one winner here. It's not going to be close either. It's going to be 100 to 1, right? Like, I think that's where it's going to be. It's not going to be, I think it's just not going to be even close. No, Ethereum, very interesting technology. It's got all this junk. But to me, it's gonna absolutely suck as an investment relative to Bitcoin. So I think the big problem here we're solving is, how do I store value, right? How do I store value safely globally over time, right? How can I be completely 100% sure that if I got 10 Bitcoin, that those 10 Bitcoin are going to be worth something 20 years from now. Same thing as I buy real estate. You buy real estate in LA, right? Yeah, it's probably going to be worth what you paid for it in 20 years, right? Pretty unlikely that you're going to get your house going to go down in 20 years, right? In 5 years, it could go down, right? But in a decade, your house will probably do okay, and it'll probably roughly match the cost of living, right? Maybe you're gonna have some house repairs and everything else, and fires, earthquake insurance, looting. I don't know, but house is going to keep its value. Bitcoin, 100% keep its value, right? It's going to more than keep its value. If you get in when we're at the 1% adoption phase and we're going to 100%, I mean, it's not going to be a store of value. It's going to be a multiplier of value, right? So, yeah.
Have you studied the history of like currency transitions, like you said, like from gold to British pound, pound to dollar? Like, has it gotten condensed through the ages? And like, what do you think then this next iteration is from USD to Bitcoin?
Okay, so first of all, why did gold not work as relative to the dollar? Well, gold is a pretty good store of value in that it's pretty rare, right? You can't, you can mine gold, and there's all these gold mining companies, but they can't find more than 3% of the total supply of gold every year. With all the mining and everything, they just can't find these. They can't get the stuff out of the ground. It's not like they're finding any new deposits or anything, right? So it's rare enough, right? The problem is gold is very, very hard to move. It's very hard to move. It's very hard to protect, and it's very hard to audit. Now, that stuff wasn't important in the 19th century. It wasn't that important because you weren't moving vast amounts of money like this on the internet and stuff like that. But once we got to the 20th century, gold started having problems. It started looking like, okay, I kind of want a money that's more like an IOU. I give you this, you give me that. And they're like, okay, let's start with the dollar will be backed by gold. Okay. So this is just as good as gold. It's like the movie Dumb and Dumber. It's like, here, this is better than dollars. It's an IOU. It's IOUs for gold. And the dollar was just like a proxy for gold. And that was a lot more efficient way than gold. So you can build banks, you can do all this stuff, you can move IOUs really fast, and then you can keep a ledger, and you can sort of just say at a computer printout, it's like, okay, well, IOU so many dollars, you owe me this, let's net those things out. Okay, net, you owe me this, right? So gold to me stopped really working as a currency in, say, the late 1800s, right? And then we sort of moved into the fiat currency world, right? And the 20th century is all about fiat currencies, and it's a lot of disasters, right? So the Germans were printing out these notes in the 1920s, and there's this famous hyperinflation that happened in Germany. But a lot of people have just gotten in trouble with printing money. They just they go back to the printer when they need more money, and they go, well, just one more time, and it's, I think that basically that's been the problem with it, is nobody can contain themselves, right? They just keep on printing to get out of stuff. Now, Bitcoin is a very efficient way to store money, right? It's a lot better than gold, right? Because I can move Bitcoin very, very reliably, and it may not be, as cheap as Solana, right? But if I'm moving $100,000 of Bitcoin, I don't care about whether it cost me 1 penny or $1. That does not matter to me, right? It's like, that's not the question. What the question is that there's 200 Bitcoin or 20 Bitcoin, right? Is the 20 Bitcoin going to be worth something a year from now or not, right? So Speed is no longer the issue. So it's fast, it's secure, it's incredibly easy to audit. You can just look at the Bitcoin address, you can move it, you can sign it, you can prove that you own it. And so it has all the functionality of gold and then some. So it's much better than gold. It is a perfect money for holding value. And it's going to be that's exactly what we need. We need that. And we need a standard, right? So all of economics is based, and the U.S. became the de facto standard, right? The dollar became the de facto standard for the world, and really after the Second World War, right? So, Europe was just left in shambles. Britain was broke. France was defeated. Germany was just nothing, right? It was just destroyed. Japan was destroyed. And so, after World War II, guess who was not destroyed? America, right? So we had all the infrastructure, we had everything, and so we've ruled the world really completely ever since the Second World War. But and what we did is we sort of said the dollar will be the world currency. Here, you guys pay each other in dollars. We encourage you to hold dollars in your own bank accounts. Great. So, the dollar has, but everything has its time. And now we're getting ready for a move from it'll be the last move, by the way. It'll be it. This is it. This is the last move. It's the final currency. This is the last boss in the video game, right? And Bitcoin is it. And basically, we need a standard, right? And so you can't have the world is not going to work with 20 or 2,000 cryptocurrencies. World needs a standard. Right now, it's sort of standardized on the dollar. It's going to standardize on Bitcoin, right? And why is it going to standardize on Bitcoin? For a lot of reasons, because it was the first one, because it doesn't have a committee like ETH has. It's not likely to be changed in any way. Nobody's going to sit there and say, we're going to change the cap of 21 million to 22 million. You can't do that on Bitcoin, right? So, so it is likely to be the boss of all currencies.
Do you think the government, does the U.S., does Jerome Powell, and I know you went to El Salvador, when they were kind of adopting Bitcoin, does the government get this, do you think? Do they know what's coming?
Here's the thing. The government is only the sum of the parts of the human beings that vote for the government, right? Now, what's going to happen in a year? In a year, there's going to be a lot of Americans who own Bitcoin. And you think they're going to vote for an anti-Bitcoin anything? No. You know what I mean? So we are going to see a very pro-Bitcoin America, right? Because guess what? We have most Bitcoin mining happens in America right now, right? With the ETFs, Americans have gotten a head start on everybody, right? So Americans are putting this stuff into their 401ks everywhere else. So we are going to see the average American become a Bitcoiner now. And that's the process of standardization. So we're going to be voting out the Elizabeth Warrens. They're on their way out. They haven't quite learned it yet. They haven't quite got the memo yet. But they're going to get the memo. And, it's going to be more of the Viveks of the world. They're going to, that are going to be, they're going to be calling the shots in the next 5 years, right? And those guys are not going to be trying to ban Bitcoin. And, the Europeans are in a different position, right? The Europeans are still clinging to this idea that they can control absolutely everything that their people do, right? They're into the surveillance capitalism, I would like to call it. You know what I mean? They're like, oh, I'm sorry, James, you're wearing an old model Apple Watch, and that one's very not green enough, So we want you to get the new Apple Watch because it's greener, And so therefore, we're going to start docking some money directly out of your CBDC account. That's the mentality of Europe right now. They want to control everything, but it's not working, right? And if at some point that their European experiment is just not going to work, right? So, meanwhile, if you're in South America right now, you're looking at El Salvador, you're in Argentina, you're looking at what Milei is doing, and you're like, yeah, we're not going to subsidize the American thing anymore. We don't care about the IMF, and we don't care about the dollar and everything, your World Bank, what are you doing? We're gonna go Bitcoin. So I think that's going to happen. And Africa, whether the governments say it or not, the people are going to use it, right? Middle East, Lebanon, uh, Turkey. So the governments are going to resist. They're going to try, but I think it's at this point they've lost.
So does this usher in then sometime soon a new world order? I mean, the way you're describing it, there's going to be a massive shift in wealth between citizens. So all of a sudden, people are going to be instant multimillionaires and have wealth that they've never had, and people that didn't invest.
Okay. So remember when Facebook went IPO?
Yeah.
Right. There was everybody who worked for Facebook suddenly became the new Zillow shopper at Palo Alto, right? Right.
Yeah.
And like literally, the price of real estate in the Bay Area just started going up like crazy because, like, you know, these guys were all shopping around for mansions, right?
Yeah.
And so imagine that, but on a much bigger scale, right? I think the word rich is going to be synonymous where you bought Bitcoin before 2025. That's what rich is going to mean, right? It's sort of like, oh, you got in on the new currency while it was still relatively cheap. How come I didn't get involved in that? I literally, I think it's going to be that simple. I think it's going to dominate pretty much all other sources of real estate, other sources of richness. Because if we do move into that thing, anybody who has had Bitcoin, early is going to be the new ruling class. Now, what does it mean for countries? Well, I think there's no country that's more Bitcoiny than the other country, right? Like, El Salvador's got some Bitcoin, but the average El Salvador is poor anyway. They don't have a lot of Bitcoin. The government hasn't. So it's pretty evenly distributed out in the world. And I would say, if anything, the U.S. is in a pretty good position right here because, we do have these ETFs. Americans own more Bitcoin than anybody else, really. Not on a per capita basis, but overall we own the most Bitcoin. So I think it's good for the U.S. I think it'll keep the U.S. I mean, I'm very bullish on the U.S. I think the U.S. is going to the U.S. is going to clean up in the next century, just like we did in the last century. That's kind of my gut feel. But I think we keep on reinventing ourselves as a country, right? Like everybody thought in the '80s that Japan was going to beat us, right? And look where Japan is now, nowhere, right? And America keeps coming back and it keeps on rediscovering itself, but we have the right DNA. And by the way, I think that DNA is very similar to Bitcoin's DNA, right? Which is sort of like, don't mess with me, right? Like, I'm for freedom. US is a country of freedom. It's based on freedom. That's why all of our ancestors came to the US, right? We're trying to get freedom from wherever we came from, right? And Bitcoin is sort of like, I control my own money. I don't need anybody else to tell me how to control my money. So you don't tell me how to spend my Bitcoin, right? That's a very American thing to me, It's red, white, and blue in Bitcoin, I think that's really where this is going. And I think that's where, if you look at Vivek, that's kind of his speeches is like, or you look at Saylor, that's what he's talking about. And it resonates with the average American, except up until now, the average American's like, where do I go to get this thing? This is too complicated, right? But I just think that the story of Bitcoin is so great for that, right? And it doesn't need any of this technology. It just needs like These are coins that you can own and you can carry them to your grave. You can give them to anybody. You can buy shit with them. You can do whatever you want with them. But they're the new money. Like, I don't know what American that doesn't. Every American is like, okay, that sounds really good. Give me some. Where do I buy these coins? That's it, right? That's literally it. And so I think it has the best. And the origin story is perfect. Like, who controls them? Nobody controls them. Who can print?
You've done a ton of research on this. I've seen you tweeting out the research about the emails. Like, just like, who do you think created this? Do you have any point of view on how this started?
I do, but I'm not going to be public about it. Okay. I have very specific beliefs, but I can't, for the preservation of Satoshi's anonymity, I will not go further than saying that. But I will say I've done a lot of work that basically tells what it was like at the beginning, right? And I think what's interesting to me is how Bitcoin was very much like, we've all three of us been involved in startups at a very early stage. And Bitcoin was a startup. So Bitcoin was this experiment that was launched the first coin was in January of 2009. And when Satoshi left in March of 2011, the market cap of Bitcoin, the market cap of all the Bitcoins that had been mined was under $5 million. Okay? I mean, a $5 million startup. I mean, I'm not talking about the value of the startup. I'm talking about the entire value of all the currency was $5 million. Imagine creating a startup and you're trying to create these new coins, and the entire value of all the new coins created and mined by everybody is $5 million. And then the founder leaves. And then fast forward 13 years, right? And this thing goes up 60,000 times in value. Like, we've never seen anything like this at all, right? Like, it's inconceivable, right? So at the very beginning, it was a complete startup. Satoshi and his helper Marty Malmy were sitting there like coding up websites, trying to figure out how to get more DAUs. They were trying to growth hack this thing, right? They're like, here, there's somebody seems to have an interest in interviewing. Hey, do you mind taking the interview? So there's a lot of this, and there's this culture of this thing, but it really hit product market fit. It hit product market fit in 2010, right? And early 2011. That's when it hit product market fit. And the product market fit, unfortunately, is not really exactly what Satoshi wanted, which the product market fit was Silk Road, right? And WikiLeaks. Had a perfect product market fit. Like, you want to give money to WikiLeaks? Go give it in Bitcoin, right? Mm-hmm. So, Satoshi sort of backed out of the project in 2011, right when the heat was kind of going on, right? Like, the government was shutting down WikiLeaks. PayPal stopped payment to WikiLeaks. And so, that's kind of what happened in 2011. But, it's a testament to how strong this model is, that without a founder, without a team, without anything, just left to the community to kind of maintain this thing now is, worth $1 trillion and is on the path to becoming, it's going to be worth more than Apple Computer. I'm convinced by the end of 2024, Bitcoin will be worth more than Google and Apple combined, right? I mean, it's not a crazy thing. We're at 1 trillion. We're going to get to 10 trillion, right? And, you sort of look at tech and then you look at money. Money is a bigger problem than tech right now. It's a bigger human problem. Like, who gets the money? How do we send the money? How do we distribute the money? How do we stop nation states from taking our money? That's just such an enormous problem. It's so big of a problem that we don't even think of it as a problem. We just think of, well, money is kind of something that the government controls, and we pay taxes and we store it in banks. But we don't think of it as, wait a second, maybe there's a better way to do this, as not even as a country, but as a species.
Yeah.
Sort of like imagine when at some point we didn't speak a language, right? We were just sitting around grunting like cavemen, right? And then you can't really imagine talking and thinking when all you're doing and every other human is just grunting. But now we're talking and thinking and writing and doing all this stuff, right? And we can't imagine what it would be like to have money that really has no gatekeepers. But yet, this has been discovered now. Money that has no gatekeepers. That's why, to get back to your Ethereum thing, I mean, it's fine. Your Ethereum guys may do okay, right? And they may do fine initially, and they may even outperform Bitcoin, whatever, for a little bit. Ultimately, they're going after something that is that small, tiny. Whereas Bitcoin is going after the big enchilada. It's all ownership of everything. That's what Bitcoin is. So this is the biggest story. It is bigger than the internet. This is much bigger than the internet. This is the thing that's going to change humanity, and it's going to happen in our lifetime. All three of us are going to know when we're old. We're going to remember this conversation, and we're going to be like, "My God, do you remember when you could buy a Bitcoin for 60,000?" And your kids will be like, "Dad, did you mean 600,000? No, 60,000. I'm telling you, you could buy a Bitcoin for $60,000." And then they'll be like, "What's a dollar, Dad?" Well, a dollar is this thing we used to use to I can't explain this. This thing, we had these currencies, and we had this one called dollar. We had another one called euro. But Dad, everybody uses one currency right now, the Bitcoin. But yeah, I know, but that was before that. There was all these things, and there was even Ethereum. Yeah, like I kind of feel like that's where we're going, and that's why I'm ultra bullish, but I'm not bullish on just it's a trade. I'm bullish that this is, I think, just a fundamental, amazing thing, and it was put out there right in plain sight, and we could see it, and we've been looking at it now for 10 years, right? We've all been looking at this thing for 10 years, but it's about to hit us in the head, and not just like, oh, somebody made money or something. But this is absolutely going to be the biggest, most significant change in the world, I think. So that's why I think it's an amazing opportunity right now, and I just don't think I think you don't have to put your life savings in it, but for you to not have any Bitcoin right now, if you're listening, it's sort of insane. You're sitting on something that is likely to be the next major evolution in human history. I mean, I'm not saying AI is not huge, and AI, obviously, machine learning, all this stuff, robots, they're all going to be huge. But I think what's going to make the most difference for you personally, and it's going to be how much Bitcoin you have. That's it. Like right now, your life, it's pretty much dependent on how many dollars you have in the bank, right? You have none, you live on the street. You have a bunch, you live in a nice house. That's it. But worldwide, we're going to have this new carrot thing. It's like, how many Bitcoin do you have, or what? Maybe you even have a whole Bitcoin. Wow, So I think we're heading in that direction.
I'm going to make
21 million. Lots of people.
Yeah.
Not enough to go around.
I'm going to make a bold prediction. I'm sure anyone that's listening to this podcast is probably really pumped to go learn more about Bitcoin and figure out where they can follow you, and they want to get in on this. So, as we wrap, where can people follow you? Where can they learn more about Bitcoin? Where can they learn more about your perspective?
What I would say is follow me. Go to Twitter. I keep it real simple. Only on Twitter, I'm Krueger, DOT Krueger. and I have about 40,000 followers, but I follow about 1,000 people, and I only follow Bitcoiners. So just look at the people I've on my follow list, okay? And those 1,000 people on my follow list are the people you want to follow. If you want to look, and just look at them and look at me and look at what they say on my feed, and you'll learn anything you want to know about Bitcoin. It's very simple. I mean, everything is right on Twitter, and Bitcoin is all happening on Twitter. Everything you want to know on Bitcoin is on Twitter. Okay, it's not nowhere else. You don't have to go read any books or anything. It's all there on Twitter. So that's what I would say. Follow me on Twitter. Listen to some spaces, and I'm on a lot, Twitter Spaces a lot, and other podcasts, and listen to me and other people talk about Bitcoin, and you'll quickly understand that either we are all completely insane, which is a possibility. Okay, I'm not saying it's not impossible, or we just might be up to something. And if we're up to something, you probably don't have that much more time. That's the only thing I would tell you. This is not like a study it and get back next year. You're probably going to miss the boat. You might have already missed the boat, but if time is absolutely of the essence here. So that I'll end with that, and I hope your readers can do their due diligence and sort of learn more about Bitcoin. But just buy some, just buy a little bit, get some, just buy some today, buy $100 today. Go to either buy it on Coinbase or go to the ETF and buy IBIT on the ETF, and just get your feet wet. Don't analyze this thing to death.
I'm about to go to my 4-month-old son's 529 plan and buy some Bitcoin.
Perfect.
There we go.
Yeah, there you go. It's perfect. He will thank you.
He may not go to college in 30 years, who knows, or in 18 years, but we'll have some Bitcoin there.
No. Look, I mean, it's the perfect bar mitzvah gift as well, right? It is the perfect gift. Okay, is to give, especially to pass it on to the next generation. I can't even think of a better gift than to give them some Bitcoin right now. So yeah, I think I've kind of become the poster child for rah Bitcoin, but I do kind of believe in it, and I love it if every one of your listeners just got a tiny little bit, and they'll thank you for having me on the show and getting them started on this kind of a rabbit hole. If you start, you're gonna get very curious, and you're gonna keep on digging, and you're gonna keep on digging, and you're gonna learn more, and you're gonna be like, wow, this stuff's really cool. So I hope you guys, I wish you guys well on your Bitcoin journeys.
Well, thank you, Fred, for doing this. We really appreciate it. And thank you for giving me my first job in tech. I appreciate that as well.
You've done great in your tech journey, James, and
I love it. Well, thank you, man. I appreciate it.